General Zethvar had commanded fleets across 17 star systems, crushed rebellions on 43 worlds, and negotiated peace treaties that had lasted centuries. His 4 arms bore the ceremonial scars of 100 victories, and his crystalline exoskeleton gleamed with medals from campaigns that had shaped the galaxy. But today, standing on the bridge of his flagship Eternal Conquest, watching the impossible unfold before him, he felt something he hadn't experienced in 300 years of warfare: genuine confusion. The enemy fleet stretched across the void like a metallic plague, 2,000 ships strong, each one bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The hegemony had brought everything: dreadnoughts the size of moons, carrier swarms that blotted out stars, and worse things that existed in the spaces between dimensions. This wasn't just an invasion force, it was the end of civilization packaged in dark metal and hatred. Against this armada, the Terran Defense Coalition had sent exactly 1 ship. "General," his tactical officer's voice trembled through the comm. "The human vessel it's requesting permission to dock." Zethvar's primary eyes tracked the small craft drifting toward his flagship. It was sleek, certainly, but absurdly tiny, maybe 300 meters from bow to stern. The humans called it a corvette, though it looked more like an oversized shuttle to his experienced gaze. Its hull bore scorch marks from a dozen battles, and its energy signature suggested weapons that were almost quaint in their simplicity. "Sir," the human pilot's voice crackled over the comm, "requesting permission to come aboard. Name's Captain Sarah Chen, Earth Defense Corps." Within minutes, she stood before him on the bridge, a small bipedal creature barely reaching his lower shoulder, wearing a simple blue uniform that looked like it had been pressed that morning. Her dark hair was pulled back in what humans called a ponytail, and her brown eyes held an expression that Zethvar couldn't quite identify. "Captain Chen," he rumbled, his translator rendering his words in her primitive language. "I appreciate Earth's gesture, but perhaps you weren't fully briefed on our situation." He gestured toward the massive holographic display dominating the bridge's center. The hegemony fleet pulsed red against the star field, each ship tagged with its devastating capabilities. "The hegemony has brought their entire 9th annihilation fleet, 2,000 ships, planet killers, reality enders. They've wiped out 7 civilizations in the past year alone." His voice carried the weight of impending doom. "My forces number 300 ships, and we're outgunned 4-1. I'm requesting immediate backup from your fleet." Captain Chen studied the display for a long moment, her small hands clasped behind her back. When she turned to face him, that strange expression was still there, something between amusement and determination. "With respect, General," she said, her voice carrying an odd lightness, "I think there's been a misunderstanding." She walked to the display and pointed at her single ship, a tiny green dot among the vast tactical overview. "I'm not requesting backup," she said simply. "I am the backup." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Zethvar felt his secondary hearts skip a beat. "Captain, perhaps your translation matrix is malfunctioning." "No, sir." She moved to the communications console and began typing something on her wrist-mounted device. "Earth received your distress call 3 hours ago. High Command considered the situation and sent appropriate response." The words hung in the air like a challenge to physics itself. Zethvar's tactical officer began to make a sound that might have been choking. "Captain Chen," Zethavar said carefully. "You're one ship against 2,000. Even with my fleet, we're facing impossible odds. What exactly do you intend to—" She held up one small hand, and somehow that simple gesture silenced a general who had commanded millions. Her wrist device chimed, and she glanced at it with satisfaction. "General, you're thinking about this all wrong. See, you've been fighting the hegemony for what, 2 years now? Playing by their rules. Big fleets, massive casualties, planetary sieges." She shook her head. "That's not really our style." Zethavar was about to respond when every alarm on the bridge began screaming at once. "Sir!" His sensor operator's voice cracked with panic. "The human ship. It's gone." The tactical display flickered, and Captain Chen's corvette had simply vanished. Not destroyed, not retreating. Gone, as if it had never existed. "What kind of cloaking technology?" Zethavar began. "Oh, we're not cloaked," came Chen's voice over the comm, now carrying a distinctly predatory edge. "We're just playing a different game." On the far side of the display, something impossible happened. The hegemony's rear guard, 50 massive dreadnoughts, simply disappeared. Not in explosions or energy discharges. They were there, and then they weren't. "You see, General," Chen's voice continued conversationally, "when you've spent most of your species' history trying to kill each other with increasingly creative methods, you develop certain perspectives on warfare." Another section of the enemy fleet vanished. Then another. The hegemony formation, which moments before had seemed as inevitable as gravity, began to collapse into chaos as ship after ship simply ceased to exist. "The thing about humans," Chen said, "is that we don't really believe in fair fights, or rules, or the laws of physics when they become inconvenient." Zethavar watched, transfixed as the most powerful war fleet in known space began eating itself, from the inside out. Ships turned on their own allies, fired weapons that shouldn't have existed, or simply folded in on themselves like origami made of dark matter. "What are you?" he whispered. "We're the species that looked at the concept of mutually assured destruction and thought, yeah, that sounds about right." Her laugh was soft, almost musical. "We're the ones who figured out how to weaponize entropy itself. We're the backup. You call when the universe needs a reminder about what impossible really means." The last hegemony ship winked out of existence, leaving only empty space where an armada had been. "General," came Chen's voice, now from directly behind him. He spun around to find her standing calmly on his bridge, though no one had seen her. "Arrive. The sector is clear. Earth sends its regards." She handed him a small data chip. "Oh, and this is a comprehensive tactical analysis of hegemony weaknesses. Should make the rest of your campaign considerably easier." As she walked toward what appeared to be empty air, Zethavar found his voice. "Captain, how do we contact you if we need—" She turned back with that same unidentifiable expression, the one he now realized was the look of a predator pretending to be prey. "General," she said, "when humanity shows up to a fight, it's because the fight was over before it started. We don't do backup calls." She stepped into nothing and vanished, leaving only the echo of her words and the impossible silence of empty space where an enemy fleet had been. Later, in his personal logs, General Zethavar would write, "Note to command. Update first contact protocols. The humans are not to be categorized as a minor spacefaring species. Recommend immediate reclassification to do not engage under any circumstances." He paused, considering, then added, "Also recommend friendship. Lots and lots of friendship."